So if you noticed, every slide presentation ends with a problem exchange, right? Because each of us have come with a set of challenges that you're trying to solve, and you're here to solve it cross-industry. So imagine that wearable device, that ultrasound tape for your rig workers, or for an astronaut. That's what we're trying to do here today, guys, and it's meant to get your mind going. Those two presentations really did a great job to get the mind racing. I do a lot of events, and I'm thinking, does your tag need to have a little bit of a health monitor in it? Maybe it does. No, it doesn't. But guys, next up we have a great panel. We are talking about Houston's major projects in sustainability coming up next, and one of them has to do with NRG Center and NRG Stadium, right? So did everybody see Texas get into the Final Four for the college football national? There you go. I see a Longhorn or two. Guys, NRG Park, NRG Stadium is going to be a sustainable living place, right? And so is Methodist, and so is the Ion. So let's go ahead and have our panelists come on up here. We've got Jason Fischer, Director of the Office of Sustainability at Houston Methodist; Alim Adatia, Senior Director of Sustainable Infrastructure at Johnson Controls; Ryan Walsh, CEO and Executive Director of the Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation at NRG Park; and Chris Wood, co-founder of Moonshot Compost and Hydrogen. Guys, let's give them a round of applause. Let's go.
Thank y'all so much for having us here today. My name is Jason Fischer with Houston Methodist Office of Sustainability, and I want to kick us off and talk about our problems and a little bit about what we do at Houston Methodist. So when looking at our problem, it's really about balancing long-term goals with short-term demand. And so when we look at healthcare, specifically around finance, everything is patient-centered. We have a demand to meet safety and quality and innovation and service for our patients. And so in doing this, it's imperative that we manage our finances, and in doing so, we find that how do we balance that with our sustainability projects? And so when we look at this, to put it in an example, we have MRI machines. If we have $1 million that we can spend towards an MRI machine or a solar project, where's the biggest return on that? Ultimately, we want to make sure the patient experience and safety and access to healthcare is first and foremost for our communities. So how do we manage that for the future and manage to develop our sustainability initiatives at Houston Methodist? And so one of the things that we constantly are looking for are sustainable technology with a palatable return on investment. At Houston Methodist, we really look at embracing the and in all that we do, specifically around sustainability, the responsible use of resources to protect the environment and protect health and well-being. And so this is the most important piece for us, protecting health and well-being, doing no harm. That is at the base of all that we do in healthcare. So we want to make sure that we incorporate this in many ways through our sustainability programs. One of those, as pictured here, is our Centennial Rooftop Gardens. And so how do we incorporate nature into our spaces, into our hospitals? And this is one project that is taking place. It will be launched with our Centennial Tower that is currently under construction. It's a 14th floor garden that will be available for our patients and visitors to provide a place for healing and education and learning. With this, we really want to continue this across the board. And when we launched our office this year in February, we looked at, well, what is going on right now? What's the low-hanging fruit? What can we implement now? And so we're in the process of launching our solar panels for our Josie Roberts parking garage that will go live within the next 12 to 18 months. We have a great green ICUs program led by Dr. Masood and our Center for Critical Care, the first one of its kind in the US, really looking to find ways to sustainably reduce our impact, reduce the amount of waste that we find in healthcare, and make a more comfortable environment for our patients.
Thanks, Jason. My name is Alim Adatia. I am an account executive at Johnson Controls. For those of you familiar with Johnson Controls, or those of you that aren't, We actually invented the thermostat about 135 years ago. So that's the claim to fame. But I work in our sustainable infrastructure division. Essentially what we do is we look at potentially upgrading facilities upgrades, and we look at everything that touches a utility within a building. So think about anything that touches electricity, anything that touches water, anything that touches gas. And within our sustainable infrastructure division, we look at various methodologies, one of which we'll talk about today in terms of our project with NRG Park, about how we can do that more effectively to reduce operations and maintenance costs, to draw some sustainability and reduction in CO2 emissions as part of the project, and really get some of the short-term needs. So quickly to touch on the project before I kick it over to Ryan. I know this slide has a lot on it, but Jason, you talked about one of your problems is sort of addressing short-term demands along with some of your long-term goals. And I think that's a really good way to look at what our offering is at this day and age. Is that what we found is that to come with a straight up sustainability play and to pitch that to individuals that are at your board, your C-suite and others is really difficult. The reality is that we live in a world today where we're part of an energy transition being the key word. And so the only way to really do that is to address short-term needs. So one of the things that NRG Park I think needed to address, so I know you needed to address, was some of the actual facilities upgrades that you needed being at the half-life of your park as a whole. So they were at the 20-year mark. They had stuff that was quite literally breaking down and needed to get upgraded. Along with that, they had budgetary constraints. So there were some financial aspects too, and you touched on that as well, Jason, that they needed to address and that they would have needed to do within a financially feasible manner. The windfall from all of that is that implementing an energy efficiency project which got them their short-term needs in a manner that was within their budgetary constraints and was put out at least an ROI that was palatable for them, allowed them to also see a project that got them all of those things, but ultimately also got them annually 241,000 approximately metric tons in a reduction of CO2 emissions. So I think if there's any context for what we do and what we're seeing is that yes, sustainability is at the forefront. It's a moral imperative, but how do you actually get it to move the needle this day and age? It's by making the case around finances, around addressing immediate term needs. And if you can find alignment along those things, I think it's a really good way to get a project done, but also to make it palatable to the powers that be that are stepping their toe into the sustainability game. So what you see there is a quick snapshot. It was a $33 million energy efficiency project that's currently in construction over at NRG Park. We basically put in upgrades that would make the park run more efficiently. So we're driving about $48 million in utility savings and $54 million in total project benefits. Those savings cover the cost of the upgrades and they cover the cost of the cost of capital. So the financing that had to be taken out with the interest rate in order to pay for the project as a whole. And over the term of this project, those savings, every single dollar plus some positive that will go back to the county will pay for the entirety of the project. So massive project that was done without taking a single additional dollar from taxpayers. And in a lot of ways, I think you would describe it as smart government. So kudos to Ryan and his team, but happy to be a partner as well. So.
Awesome. Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Ryan. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of NRG Park. Our group, which is the Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation, we're the landlord of NRG Park. We oversee, maintain, and develop the 350 acres of county-owned property. I say county-owned because that's important. One, they own the place, so I got to give them credit. But two is because they pay directly the utilities. So all of the lights, all of the water, all of the natural gas is paid for by Harris County. So it was important to us to not only this project, but also to the working with the county to find a creative way to solve a problem. And if you talk to any facility manager, any stadium operator, and they say, we've got all the money we need to maintain our facilities, they're absolutely lying to you. Don't believe a word they say from that point forward. So for us, it's certainly how do we find a creative solution to an ongoing problem? We've got 350 acres. We have almost 6 million people that come to the facilities every year. We've got, of course, our two major tenants, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo and the Houston Texans, amongst all the other events that happen out at the park. We've got about 600 event days a year, so that's a lot of stuff going on. One, how do we attribute that much capital to a large project when we've got so much else going on? But two, and as Alim and his team are finding out now, is how do you do this major infrastructure project in the midst of all of these things going on? CFP coming up in January, we've got Final Four. I guess it was spring. World Cup coming up in 26. We've got a lot of stuff going on, and how do we balance the two? And kudos to Alim and his team. They've frustratingly been working through it. But a $34 million infrastructure project that gets us HVAC upgrades, that gets us lighting upgrades, that gets all of the energy efficiency projects that we think from a public standpoint are very, very important to do, not only because it saves us money in the long run, but because it's the right thing to do. So how do you do what's right balanced with the need for the money to do what's right? And I think we've been able to do that, capture a very creative financing solution for a major infrastructure project. But as part of that, as we work through the creativity of being able to do the energy efficiency upgrades, we are also able to get some stuff that may not be the sexy side, but certainly needed projects, including like the building automation system, the life fire safety system. So we were able to leverage that as part of this energy efficiency project, which from an operator standpoint is absolutely critical, because you still got to have the money to keep the lights on, you got to have the money to do the fun stuff, but you also got to keep the buildings going so that when you guys do come to NRG Stadium, you're not like, man, this place looked like crap. And it continues to operate, and we're also marketable in the industry. We're able to continue to attract those big events like college football playoffs and World Cup and Final Four and Super Bowl and things like that. So it was certainly for us a learning experience. It was a thinking outside the box. It wasn't the standard way of doing things. So credit to Alim, Johnson Controls, for helping us think outside the box in a way that allows us to continue to operate and be marketable, but also be, I'd say, almost a quarter more energy efficient than we have been in previous years. So that for us, that's very, very important, and certainly lessons learned for large facility operators, that there is a way to do it. There really is. I mean, when you look at the price tag that comes with it, it's a little bit of a heart attack, I guess, at first, but then you realize there's a way that you can do it that doesn't eat up all of the capital that you needed for everything else. So thank you very much for having me this morning.
I believe you have a video.
We do. This is a promo video for the Johnson Controls project. This is such a historic day for all of us because in my mind, it's the start of the future of NRG Park. Over the last 20 years, NRG Park has welcomed more than 72 million people through our gates. Tens of thousands of events and an economic and community impact that would be hard to quantify. As we look toward the future of the park, we have to have a vision that goes beyond today, next year, or even 5 years from now. We have to ask ourselves, how can we have an impact for generations to come? And that's what we're here to talk about today. We were looking for a way to enhance our facilities and certainly thinking about the future of NRG Park over the next 20 or 30 years.
NRG Park and HCSCC chose to look at an energy savings performance contract in an effort to yield the returns that they needed to upgrade the park, but by doing so without going back to residents for additional taxpayer dollars.
Our team here, but our CEO and our board understood that we need to be thinking progressively. And I think that understanding that both JCI and our Corp had vision about the future, that's what made the magic.
The objective for the project is to create a state-of-the-art stadium experience, and NRG Park is truly going to be a role model for energy efficiency and sustainability nationally and even globally for other stadiums.
There were a variety of energy conservation measures that were included in this project. Those included chillers, HVAC components, as well as building automated systems. It also included upgrades to our water and lighting. We were also being able to bring to bear some of our digital experience at Johnson Controls, also known as Open Blue Cup. It's the central utility plant and our central plant optimization.
Johnson Controls will reduce our carbon footprint by 40%. It'll put the biggest dent that I can think of in terms of what Harris County can do to reduce its carbon footprint.
The partnership between Harris County and Johnson Controls is an innovative collaborative. It's an understanding that we have an opportunity to create something fresh and unique here at NRG Park in a way of sustainable and a healthy environment through the innovative technology that JCI brings.
They've made commitments and we're making commitments, and we're kind of walking hand in hand with them on their journey for this.
The success of this project is a result of the robust and extremely collaborative process that we had with the folks at NRG Park.
Making this sustainability goal a reality through this particular project is exciting for me. This project is a huge step in the right direction, and we're demonstrating to the country how committed we are here in Harris County.
If we put our collective genius together, there's nothing that's impossible for us to accomplish. The best is yet to come.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Chris Wood. I'm with Moonshot Compost and Moonshot Hydrogen, and we're principally trying to solve the problem of what you do with food waste. Right now, 30 to 40% of all food that's produced for human consumption goes to waste. That means it's about 20% of all landfills. It's the largest category of anything in a landfill. And just to give you an idea on scope of landfill, we have dozens of them around Houston. The tallest point in the city of Houston is atop of a landfill. And this is true all around the country. So this is a problem we're solving, not to mention when food waste goes to landfills, gets covered up, it decomposes anaerobically and produces methane. So if we can keep food waste out of the landfill, we're extending their lives, we're reducing greenhouse gases, and we're reusing the vital ingredients of food waste. All the nutrients are in the food that normally go to a landfill and get wasted, we can reuse if we're doing something like composting, which is what we've been doing recently. Composting is fantastic. It's nature's way to break things down. Little bugs do good work, and you can distribute that compost around the city. But we've challenged ourselves at Moonshot Compost to say, what else could we do with food waste? One of the solutions that we're very proud of finding with a professor at Purdue University is a biological process for converting food waste directly to hydrogen. And this process does not create any additional greenhouse gases. It allows us to have a local problem, or a local solution to a local problem, so we can bring food waste in a community to a single spot in 24 to 30 hours, convert it to hydrogen, and distribute that hydrogen locally. The great thing about hydrogen as a fuel source, whether we're thinking about it as a fuel source for vehicles or a fuel source for backup generators or the other technologies that are coming our way, is the only emission from a hydrogen fuel cell that is converting that hydrogen to energy is water. And so in our program of capturing food waste, converting it to hydrogen, and then distributing it locally to replace hydrocarbons, it's really a double negative from a carbon intensity score, which means it's not just carbon neutral, but it's pulling carbon from the atmosphere. And we think that's a really big deal when it comes to waste. You know, in the waste space that we're in right now, when you start talking to someone at a large institution about, hey, let's do something smart with your food waste, all they think of is, this is messy, this is expensive, and what's my palatable ROI on this project? And the great thing about hydrogen and returning it back at a marketable price is that we know that eventually, not day one, but eventually we'll be buying that food waste from people. And that's the way the market should work. When you've identified a waste stream that has value, the people that are source segregating and separating that waste stream should derive some of the value from the hard work that they're doing. And so we believe that over time, with technologies like food waste to hydrogen, we can start really changing the economics around waste, really encouraging people to do smart things. And you know, it's not just that food waste is 20% of landfills. It is the heaviest part of waste outside of construction. You know, it is the wettest part of waste. It is the smelliest part of waste. So when we can start doing smart things with food waste, it changes the dynamic for the entire waste stream that an organization is left with. After 3.5 years of operating Moonshot Compost, we've seen that time and time again. The surprise on people's faces 6 months after diverting food waste at how much easier the rest of their trash, the rest of their recycling is. So on our problem slide before, we're very early in this program for food waste to hydrogen. We have a commercial pilot that's set to start any day now in Indiana, where Purdue is located. And you know, after that pilot, you know, we're going to learn some things. Technology has been proven in the laboratory. We're going to learn some things from an engineering perspective. We're going to be raising money. Oh, hello. To build our team, and that's what our challenge is right now: is building the team around us so that when the pilot is complete, we can come back to cities like Houston, where we want to lead the energy transition and bring a facility here so that we can start converting food waste to hydrogen and distributing that to our partners at scale. And just some statistics. Oh, Jason, jump back real quick. It blows my mind how much food waste there is. These numbers are true. I verified them, 18 different ways with 18 different people. About 140 billion pounds of food waste annually in just the US. Using all that waste, we could power semi-trucks to drive 11.1 billion miles annually. Or one truck, 23,000 times to the moon and back in a year. the numbers are staggering. And if we can reverse the economics around waste so that we're paying people for it, we think it's possible to dream those big dreams. And that's why we called ourselves Moonshot. And we're really excited to be here today talking about big projects.
Excellent. Thank you. So I want to kick off with a question around partnerships. And I know, Chris, you touched on this a little bit about finding the right partners to be able to manifest the future of your operations. And then, Ryan, I know that you've talked a little bit about your experience in finding a partner to go on this journey with. And from my perspective, it really takes a collaboration as a service for sustainability to be successful. As we look at Houston and the opportunities that we have, I know today this is a great community to bring people together. But what do you look for in a partner, and what can Houston do better to make sure there's that collaboration and to make sure that we're all successful in sustainability?
So first, I got to tell you, when you were talking about the food waste to hydrogen, all I can think of was Mr. Fusion from Back to the Future, the power of the DeLorean. So I'm excited about that. That would be a great opportunity. But to your question, is finding the right partner. When I was invited here to speak today, it was pumps and pipes. I'm thinking, well, I have nothing to do with engineering and nothing to do with healthcare. Why am I coming to this? But then it got me thinking about the partnerships, and it's you find partners in the most unlikely places, and how important it is to not only think creatively about the project, but the partner that you bring onto your project. So working with Alim and Johnson Controls, we thought we've got enough thermostats. We don't need more frickin' thermostats in the building. But when it was explained what it was that he was talking about, this energy efficiency program, and how it could renovate not only the facilities, but also our green energy solutions that we were looking for, because at the time we were starting to talk about that. So working with Johnson Controls and Alim, it was really important. We'd looked at some others in previous years about how do we do an energy efficiency project. It's certainly important. We spend $10 to $15 million a year on electricity alone. So I mean, reducing that cost, but two, reducing the emissions was very important to us. The ones that we talked to previously just didn't have what we were looking for as far as the kind of structure, the cost, and also the result that we wanted. So we were a little skeptical when approached by Johnson Controls, but certainly we had an existing contract with them. They maintain our chillers and some of our other infrastructure in the central plant now. So it was kind of a natural evolution as it went. So for us, it was the right partner at the right time with the right result. And so certainly glad we did that. The county was a big part of that. They had just passed their, climate action plan. So it went hand in hand with the opportunity to reduce our carbon emissions by 240 cubic tons or metric tons? Metric tons. Numbers are important, I'm learning. But also as part of the front-facing part of this is important, because a lot of these groups that are looking for facilities to have their major events, whether it's CFP, whether it's NCAA Final Four, or even to a large extent FIFA, part of their requirements these days are, what is your energy sustainability plan? What is your green plan? What is your action plan to combat climate change? So they really want to know a lot about that. And we found in our research that a lot of it is, virtue signaling or greenwashing or whatever. People talk a really good game. So to be able to say, here's what we're doing, and I'd love to show you the central plant if you want to come look at it. I mean, for us, it's very important, because it's not only walking the walk, but talking the talk, and as far as marketing these types of events. So it was a great partnership that Johnson Controls brought to us.
And Jason, if it's okay, just take that a step further. I also think that's important. Everything Ryan said is very important, but to take it a step further in the sense of cross-pollination and why you have people from different industries here today. Even when we implemented this particular project, and I think I mentioned this to you, Jason, we were selecting the various facility improvement upgrades and working with his team to sort of come to an optimal group of upgrades that they needed that addressed their needs and also gave an ROI. But one of the upgrades we implemented, because there was a track record from another industry, specifically Houston Methodist, was the smart valve. So it was foreign to us as Johnson Controls. Our risk folks were like, well, what is this thing that you're including in the project? And his team was able to say, look, we've seen it work over at Houston Methodist. We talked to them. We want to implement it in our energy efficiency project. So this idea of cross-pollination, the idea that you can set a track record, that you can establish credibility and now have more and more people adopt things that actually work, I think goes a long way in terms of, as you put it, Houston, sort of addressing this energy transition and doing our part to reduce CO2 overall. So I wanted to add that piece as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little background on that, that was actually for our water meters. And we were able to install water meters behind on the city side that monitors the usage coming in, and we can actually determine how much air is in that water and be able to make sure that we're not being charged for anything more than the water that is flowing into the hospital. So we've seen a return on investment significantly quick with that, and so we appreciate that partnership. Yeah. So, Chris, to that question in partnerships, I know from my experience in working in waste and finding waste recycling solutions that there's a lot of disjointed information. I've been on a hunt trying to track down and get information together. What can we do to better share each other's stories, and what have you found that has been beneficial for partnerships?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of ideas when it comes to partnerships. One, you really define the role you're going to have in a relationship by the way you try to solve a problem. And at Moonshot, from the very beginning, we knew there was not enough data around food waste. And so we have measured every pound of food waste that we've collected since my co-founder and I were driving around our own personal trucks with little hand scales. And because we knew the data would matter, at that point we didn't have a use for it. Later down the road, once the COVID lockdown was over, I would recommend not starting a business during the lockdown. And we started running into larger people, larger institutions. It mattered a lot, speaking with institutions like Methodist, that we could say, on a weekly basis, we're going to provide you your waste data. Not only are we going to do that, we're going to provide it to you in a way that you can share it with internal and external stakeholders. We developed something called the diversion dashboard that's shareable through QR codes and URLs for all our commercial subscribers, because we know that without the ability for our partners to tell a story about the good work that they're doing, it's almost like it doesn't happen. And I don't like talking about greenwashing because it's very confusing to me, but this is where I'd like to transition to the city of Houston and how we're a little different. We are never likely going to lead on environmental solutions. That's just not our ethos. But we are a city where merit can get you very far, and we are a city that likes to quickly follow. And so one of the things that we've seen as we've continued to have conversations across the city and look for partners, when we say we're going to be operationally excellent, this will be clean and easy, we're going to give you data, people say, oh, data. And then we quit talking about the operational excellence and we start focusing on, I wonder how much food waste we really have. I wonder how much compost you're really going to make for it. Oh, I get the compost back. And all of a sudden we're talking about the right things. And so it's the nature of the solutions that we provide that help us find the right partners. We do operate in other cities in Texas, and one of those cities has mandates around food waste. The most depressing thing for us as an institution is that no one there cares about it. Because it's a mandate, you just sort of think, oh, it's going to happen. And so what we've seen is the service providers, there's kind of just a race to the bottom and service level quality and pricing. We really enjoy being in the cities where the mandates haven't gotten yet, so that we can meet with great partners, innovate around solutions, and then compete on price. If we can't compete with the traditional haulers on the price of food waste, this isn't going to work. It really has to be price competitive, and we're doing what we can around that. So it's been really fun to offer solutions that we view as innovative, to find partners that want to think of themselves as innovative as well.
Thank you, Chris. I think one of the things that stood out to me, you talk about the data. And for me, I'm always about show me the data. And when we look at sustainability and the work that you're doing, I think of from the health side, we have our Center for Health Data and Science Analytics, and that plays a lot into population health. And I know we've talked a little bit in the past about some potential possibilities around how that could be, how the tracking of food waste data could be implicated in determining health of communities and what we might be able to learn to develop and change for the future. But on top of that, looking at tracking our data from an emissions standpoint, and I know that there are a lot of different programs from the HVAC to the lighting. How are you tracking that data, and how are you telling that story to really promote to your constituents, your stakeholders across the Houston area?
Well, we're starting to take a bigger look at that, and just as you were talking, Chris, we've been approached by a few groups to talk about food waste, including Moonshot. And one of the things that's interesting, for better or worse, AI is here. So there's technology now that you put a camera over your trash haul, your dumpsters, and it'll tell you how much cardboard you've got, how much metal you've got, how much plastic film you've got, how much food waste you've got, so that we can better know how much we're producing and how much is either going to a landfill or how much we could pull out of that and do food waste recycling or plastic film recycling, whatever the case might be, which we've started to do. Certainly, you guys have a great partnership with Waste Management and Airmark, and those are two of our contractors as well. So starting to think more about, from not even just from a stakeholder standpoint, but an operational standpoint, how do you maximize the efficiency of what you're doing, but at the same time, able to bring in a group like Moonshot that take the food waste, bring in another group that takes the plastic film, bring in another group that does cardboard or metal, however you'd want to do it. But the metrics are pretty staggering in a stadium like NRG Stadium. We've talked to a couple of stadiums around the country, and the name escapes me, but the stadium in Seattle is starting to do a lot of food waste recycling. SoFi has a massive operation that does nothing but food waste recycling. So it's a growing industry, a growing trend, and certainly something that we're taking note of. And balancing those metrics on, to your point earlier, the ROI versus as Alim said, the moral imperative to do what's right in the recycling and this industry.
Yeah, and the impact is really fun to measure because it's hard to translate this decision I'm making when I'm standing over my sink and cutting food, or this decision I'm making when I'm trying to discern which waste stream to pay attention to. So one of the things we do with our data is create carbon equivalencies. So you can see if you've avoided this much methane from diverting this much food waste, you get to measure your carbon footprint as you're going. And that just falls in line with that mantra, you can't change what you can't measure. So if we give folks the carbon equivalency, then it's up to them to really place in a hierarchy how important is this step relative to other things that we're doing. And so just clear communication and transparency, showing people what the actual metrics are. We can't wait to bring hydrogen into the mix and start showing people, you're displacing the hydrocarbons of a fleet of vans with the fleet of vans powered by hydrogen. We think that data is just going to further speed how quickly we can start getting that food waste out of the landfill.
Excellent.
And I'd add one last thing, Jason. I think the data can also become the engine that allows these projects to become more feasible in some ways as well. So I don't want that part to be lost. One of the facilities improvement measures that we included at the NRG Park project that's also part of a larger Johnson Controls offering called Open Blue, which is this digital piece that sits on top of everything that we do within a facilities. And Open Blue's main goal is to just aggregate data to give facility owners, operators, et cetera, the ability to now have data to support what they're doing, but also to run more efficiently. So one of the facilities improvement measures we did is they have 10 2,000-ton chillers. They have 20,000 tons of chiller capacity at NRG Park. And we implemented what we call central plant optimization. It's essentially AI that runs on top of their chiller plants to make them run more efficiently. So not only does that now allow them to collect data on how they're operating during an event, outside an event, various other options, and to optimize that, but it also allows them to run more efficiently for the purpose of even making this project feasible. It generates more savings so that now those in the operator seat can go to their boards, can go to the C-suite and say, look, with these additional facility improvement measures, much of which is digital and data oriented, we can now make this a lot more of a feasible project than maybe when we explored it 5 years ago, it wasn't feasible. So I think data also becomes the engine, not just a way to prioritize. And I think that's an important takeaway. And I think the aggregation of that data is going to allow us to become more predictive, as opposed to just monitoring maybe how our facilities are doing or other aspects of them. So,
excellent. Well, I know that we've talked a little bit about potential projects, and when you look at rolling out your sustainability initiatives, what do you tackle first? And you talked about, I believe the phrase there, the analogy was, if you're going to buy the custom suit, you want to lose the weight first. And so looking at how you can reduce your energy before you really go into those innovative projects. But my question to all of you today is, once we are able to achieve that initial loss and those initial focuses, what do you look to in the future? What do you see? I know as we look for our potential, we look to partner with organizations like yours to find ways to go beyond just the day-to-day energy efficiency and really think outside of the box, whether it's hydrogen for our fleet vehicles or backup generators or medical grade CO2 derived from that same source. What do you see in the next 5, 10, 15 years as being the really big game changers in energy and sustainability that you're most excited about?
Yeah, I can start off here. I think, Jason, it's a journey for sure. I think everything, if you think of it as sort of a circle that starts in one place and ends in another, from just laying out goals and a plan in order to make sure that you have a sense of where you want to be, at least in the 5-10-year range, and then thinking about those projects, whether they be energy efficiency projects, whether they're distributed energy projects or supply side projects, and then ending in some space where you can actually do the measurement, I think is critical. Don't leave that off the table, because I think not only does that allow you to look at, what have you done as an organization, what value can you glean from it, but also it sets you up in a place to be able to continue that journey over and over again. So I think that's really important. If you look at that journey because of where we are, I think there are some logical steps to go through. You referred to one. The way I like what Jason was alluding to is I like to refer to energy efficiency projects a particular way. I think if you're an entity that's going out to look for new renewable energy sources, solar, battery storage, wind, whatever it is, if you liken that to buying new clothes, then energy efficiency projects are losing the weight before you go buy those new clothes. So you're looking at your own footprint, thinking about what you look like, how much energy you consume, and optimizing that before you go and buy new sources of power to then run those facilities' footprints or the business that you have. So that's the logical aspect of it, is I think that there are certain steps you can take before others. I think they can be done in parallel as well. But I also think that we're in a world where some of these projects are expensive. They're very expensive. And so when you have the opportunity for certain incentives, the IRA, for example, has a lot of incentives that you shouldn't pass on maybe taking advantage of that as well. So although it can make the whole process a little bit more complicated, I think you've got to be opportunistic and logical at the same time. And ultimately, to your very first problem statement, you're also going to be driven by your needs. So if you have something breaking down or you have an imminent need to address, that might expedite a project that otherwise maybe was number 4 on your list, but really makes sense for you in that moment. So that's sort of the take. We're trying, I think, with a lot of other entities to become sort of a one-stop shop as it relates to setting a plan and getting through all of these pieces and measurement at the end and bringing in partners that are sort of best in class on each of those pieces to deliver to entities and companies. But that's, I think, a broad framework of maybe how to think about it.
I would say really it's very well said. Thank you. Ditto. But for us, it's also an incremental change. It's not just the big, massive infrastructure projects, but it's the little changes. And it starts, frankly, with the people. If you look at the way that you do the processes and the procedures, if you look at the way that trash is hauled, if you look at the way that people are moved, if you look at the way that the lights are turned on, for us in the stadium before say a football game, a Texans game, we have to start pre-cooling the building 48 hours before in order to get to a temperature level. So is there a different way to do that? It's the small incremental changes that you can do that eventually add up to not only the savings, but also the big changes. So I think for us, it's a process thing. It certainly is. And it starts very, very small that leads to the large changes.
And I'll just say quickly, I think that the incentives that the IRA and other programs have provided for environmental projects are necessary and important, but to borrow a metaphor from NRG Park, you also sometimes, to complete a long pass, you have to throw to where that receiver is headed and let them run under it. And for us, a solution like hydrogen that we chose out of many is important because we can plan projects that will stand on their own 2 feet without the incentive. We are trying to play the end game where our projects will pay for themselves and stand on their own 2 feet economically without the incentive structure there. Now, I assure you, we will take advantage of all the incentives that are available between now and then, and that's why they are there. is to help us find financing and to have some trust that the DOE and others will come in and help us prove this stuff up. But we're trying to aim for technologies that will help our partners have a solution for the next 20 years, for the next 30 years, not just for the next 8 or for the next 6 while the incentives are still there. So, you know, it's trying to be long-term focused with short-term results is a challenge, but it's something that in sustainability, if you're not doing that, you know, it's your story will be short.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate everyone's insight today. I know I could talk about this all morning, and really appreciate the partnerships and the work that you're doing for Houston, and excited to continue to see the work that you're doing, and hope to continue partnering with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's keep that going, guys. Well done. Thank you so much for the great conversation around sustainability.